All right, so day 9 here. I went ahead the other night and put on one of my wheels real quick just to see what that looked like. Looks pretty good. Everything clears. I figured it would. All the dimensions checked out. So today's plan is to get the rear end underneath the truck. So I'm going to bolt the trailing arms on, get the axle in, get the shocks, get the springs, get all that on, get this all buttoned up, torqued down so that I can start working on the front end. So that's kind of where we're at this morning. So let's just see how far we get today. All right, the trailing arms are in. I just have the bolts in. I don't have the nut on yet, so everything's still loose. Next step is I'm going to bolt the axle to the trailing arms and kind of show how all these Ride Tech parts go in, part of the street grip kit. So it's pretty simple, but I thought I'd kind of show a little bit of assembly of how these things go together. All right, now I'm going to bolt on the axle to the trailing arms here. It's a pretty simple setup, just a U-bolt. It's got a looks like about an 1.5-inch spacer block. The passenger side's got provisions for the Panhard bar, so I'm going to go ahead and bolt this on here real quick to kind of show how it goes together. So pretty simple. It's got a U-bolt that slips in like this. The tab goes towards the back of the truck to catch the Panhard bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this down on here. Get this thread through there. Get this up to here. Run that bolt through. Put the shock mounting plate on the bottom down here. And then what I did, just for ease of putting this together kind of by myself, is I went and bought some 3/4-inch jam nuts. So they are just about half the size of a regular nut, just so I can run these up real quick. These come with nylocks from Ride Tech, so trying to get those threaded on by yourself, kind of tough. So I just bought these jam nuts just kind of for temporary installation purposes. So, and that's it. So now let's put the nylocks on there and torque it down, and we can move on to the next part. Okay, the rear end is bolted in. I'm running short on time, so I didn't videotape a whole lot of it. I was humping this morning to get this far. Everything's torqued down with the exception of the Panhard bar, the U-bolts, and the bolts for the trailing arm back there on the frame. Those are 140 foot-pounds. The U-bolts are 250 foot-pounds, so I got to go get a bigger torque wrench from home. And then bolt this in. At this point, once I get all that done, everything back here is done. I'm going to put the brakes on, the calipers anyway, for good. I'm going to put stainless brake lines on that. That's going to be another video. I decided on the stainless pre-bent kit just in the essence of time. The nickel copper is definitely cheaper, but we're getting close to car show season here, so I don't get this thing on the road. So I'm going to order that actually tomorrow, along with the new fast ratio steering box, so I can get those here by next weekend so we can get going on the front end. But hopefully here in the next couple days we'll be able to get back up here and get this back end tied up and get it all ready so that we can start putting the bed on. I'm probably going to leave the bed off for a while and just start working on the front end, get it going, get it all buttoned up. But it's a good feeling to finally have this thing converted over officially from leaf springs to coil springs. It's been a long process, but everything went pretty smooth. It's all factory parts with the exception of all the Ride Tech stuff, but everything looks pretty good. So anyway, hope to continue this video here in the next couple days. All right, it's been a couple days here, so I came back out in the shop, had a couple parts show up. I've got my stainless steel brake line kit from Inline Tube. It arrived, as well as the Redhead fast ratio steering box that I'm going to put on here in the next couple weeks. I just kind of want to show how all of these brake lines are going to work out. I ordered a kit from a 72 short bed with coil springs. Since this is a bit of a mutt, these cross members are actually from a 69, this Panhard and this shock cross member. The shock cross member is not as big a deal as the Panhard cross member. These 72s usually have a little tab sitting here that holds the line that goes, the flexible line that goes from here down to the hard lines. So I'm going to have to do some fabricating on that. As well as figuring out how I'm going to mount my transition from a hard line to a flexible line out to this caliper. So I have some thoughts on that. So anyway, let me set the camera up here and I can kind of go into a little more detail. Okay, so here the transition from the hard line to the flexible line. What I did is I bought these clamp-on adapters here, which will basically take the hard line to the flexible line out to the caliper here. And what I was planning on doing was clamping this down. I ended up actually getting these pretty trick black T-bolt clamps. I'm going to clamp that down to the axle. So what I need to do is figure out because this line goes straight into where the wheel cylinder would be. So I've either got to rebend it, which I've got a lot of line to deal with, kind of back out here and have it terminate here, or cut and reroute it and reflare it. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do there yet. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. These inline brake line kits are pretty slick. Got a couple little weird bends in them, but nothing that can't be fixed. So you know, every one of these trucks seems to be a little bit different, so I'm sure they can't bend them all perfect. But anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking for the transition. So in the next couple of videos, I'm not going to worry about this right now, but in the next couple of videos, I'm going to start trying to figure out these brake lines and figure out what I'm going to do with this on both sides, as well as trying to figure out where I'm going to run the line from the frame to the pumpkin. So we'll kind of figure that out on the fly. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the Panhard bar on. I went ahead and switched over to the stock diff cover so that it would clear the Panhard bar. You may notice that those are grade 8 bolts. I actually kind of like the look of it. It was kind of an interesting story. I was at the hardware store buying bolts, and I was going to buy shoulder bolts for those, with just grade 5 shoulder bolts. And they were crazy expensive, and I went over and just happened to look at the grade 8 bolts, and they were like literally 6 cents a piece for these bolts, and I couldn't pass it up. So it was less than a quarter of the price of the shoulder bolts, so I think it looks pretty sharp. So definitely doesn't need grade 8 bolts, but it looks pretty sharp with that gold hue down here. So basically right now what I've got set up here is I've got a ratchet strap on the rear end here. And the way it sits from the factory is this passenger side shock sits a little bit further inboard than the shock on the driver's side, so it kind of pushes the rear end over here towards the passenger side. So what I've done here is I put a ratchet strap on there to kind of center it back up as it sits at full extension. So this will have to be adjusted once it's at ride height, but this will kind of get us into the ballpark of where I needed to go. I took a measurements at actually about 36 inches center to center of holes here. So I'm going to go ahead and set the Panhard bar with the equal threads on both ends. Just get it in there and get it centered. If anything, once this thing sits on ride height, it's going to pull a little bit more towards the driver, or the passenger side here, I should say. As that bar flattens out, it's going to want to push the axle this way. So this is kind of get us in the ballpark here. Figured it better than nothing. There's no instructions in the manual or in the Ride Tech manual for this, but I figured since it's kind of shoving it anyway towards the passenger side, I'd go ahead and pull it back just a little bit of the way and kind of center it as is right now. And I'll go ahead and put that in there real quick. All right, so this Ride Tech Panhard bar utilizes heim joints on either end here, and you can see them here. This is a spherical heim joint here. To install these, you need to use the supplied spacers. It's kind of tapered. It's got a big end and a small end. The big end goes towards the mounting bracket. The small end goes towards the heim joint. And what that does is it allows that heim joint to have full motion. If you flip that around, you can see what that's going to do is it's going to limit the rotation of that heim joint. Not such a huge deal here, since this is just basically vertical movement. There is no horizontal movement really, or well, I should say forward and back movement to speak of, since this thing is kind of pinned in the fore and aft direction. But nonetheless, you got to install those things so that they go in correctly. So the way this works here is I'm actually going to put this way to kind of hide nut. So what I did is I put the adjustment end down here on the bottom as opposed to the other end up top, just for easier adjustment when you're up on a lift or whatever, trying to center this rear end. So basically it just kind of goes in like this and slide that other, actually get that through there. Kind of hard to do by myself here, but then skinny in towards the heim joint. Actually get that to come back a little bit. See if we can get that in there. Hold it there, shove it through. Oops. There we go. And that's it. So go ahead and put the nut and the washer on here. And one thing about these nuts is these are all stamped. They're all stamped from plate steel. So when the die comes down and hits the plate, it kind of puts a nice shoulder on one side and puts a ridge on the other. I like to put that ridge out away from the material that I took so much time painting, just to kind of save the painted surface there. I know it's kind of silly, but you know, work so hard to paint all that stuff, make it all look pretty. might as well keep it nice. So, but anyway, that's kind of it. That's kind of how those go in. I'm going to go ahead and put the other end real quick, and then we will see where it sits once I let the tension off of the ratchet strap. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about this rear end. I've kind of mentioned it in passing that I built it, but this actually, I bought this off a guy. He's about 2 miles from my shop here. He actually sells lots of parts. He buys and breaks down old beat up trucks that are going to go to the crusher. He kind of saves them from the crusher, takes all the good parts off of them, but he sells all over the world. So, but anyway, this thing was kind of, like I say, a basket case. I'll show some pictures here, but it was beat up. Somebody had tried to take it apart at some point, and I guess I just gave up and kept driving it, but they had beat the diff pin in there, and it was mushroomed on both ends. I tried to get it out, tried to work it out, tried to use heat, but I ended up actually just using a torch, cutting the pin, just ditching all the internals. The axles had real bad grooves worn in them on both ends. The seals had they had been bad for a long time, and somebody just kept driving it. One of the axles, I can't remember which one, had a one of those axle saver bearings in it, so they knew it was bad. But anyway, I ended up pitching the axles too. So it's got Moser axles in it. It's got an Eaton limited slip with the carbon fiber clutches. It's got a Richmond, the Italian-made gear. Apparently, I found this out the hard way. I was trying to buy a Yukon, but I found out that the Richmonds, I guess there's some that are made in China, some that are made in Italy. They used to all be made in the U.S., but Italians seem to know what they're doing. So the like I say, it's got a 373 Richmond Italian-made gear in it. It's actually got a Series 3 carrier in it, and the reason I did that, I ended up putting the thicker 373 in there, but I did the Series 3 so that if I want to, later down the road, I can go to a 355 if I want to. Since this thing is going to have a 6-liter with possibly either turbos or a blower, I just wanted to kind of leave myself some options there. So since you're able to buy the thick 373, that made it a little easier to switch between gears if I have to. So, but yeah, I've rebuilt that rear end. Oh, it's almost a year ago now. It was my first rear end and probably my last. Everything spec'd out perfectly. All the backlash is perfect. All the preload is perfect. But it was a lot of work, a lot of trial and error. I think it's probably worth paying somebody to do it, but I wanted to do it once. So, but that's a little backstory on this rear end that I've kind of mentioned on in passing in previous videos. Finally done. The rear end is completely converted over to coil springs. It's got a RideTech Street Grip kit back here. It's got Wilwood disc brakes. All the stuff back here is the torque that down, but I left that loose so that I could seal this up here. I left I hadn't sealed this diff cover yet just because I wanted to make sure that the brakes went together so I didn't have to pull the axles out again, because like I say, the Toyota FIPG I put on these things is like liquid cement. It is ridiculously good. So just wanted to make sure before I sealed it up that everything was good. So the brakes all fit, everything's good to go. Got to torque down these nuts up here in the trailing arms, but they're 145 foot-pounds. I didn't really want to climb under the truck and do it, so I'm going to do it on the lift. RideTech shocks in there, the springs are in there, the Panhard bar, everything's good to go. Everything fits, everything's square, the axle's square with the body. Everything looks good. Plenty of clearance on the calipers and the rotors there on the wheels. So, but at this point, the rear end is officially done. It has been probably the slowest conversion ever, but we got there. Like I say, an hour at a time is tough, but we're there. I do appreciate you guys watching. I've had a couple comments about maybe making some longer videos, so I'm hoping to show a little more detail here and hope that this is what you guys are looking for. So the next video is going to be on the front end here, so I'm probably going to go ahead and get cleaned up today and get it rolled back and maybe get it up on jack stands and kind of assess and figure out where we want to start on that. But it's kind of where we're at right now. So like I say, do appreciate you guys watching. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to. Drop a comment if you have any questions or any comments on anything I'm doing here. Like I say, I'm not a mechanic, just a lowly engineer that don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm willing to dive into anything. So far it's going well. Everything bolted together. So anyway, that's about it for this time. Thanks for watching.